Yu was just a little kid with a rough life. His childhood wasn't the kind anyone would wish for. Instead of love and care, his parents treated him like an outcast, constantly calling him a demon and throwing hurtful words his way. The verbal abuse didn't stop there, it turned physical, and at one point, his own father even tried to kill him. Yu managed to survive, but in the process, he lost his family once and for all. After that, Yu was sent to an orphanage. It was there that he met the head of the place, who introduced him to Mika and the other kids living there. They were warm, welcoming, and genuinely kind, but Yu was still scarred by everything he'd gone through. Trusting anyone felt impossible, and he convinced himself he didn't need a family after all, the one he had nearly destroyed him. Even though Yu kept his distance, the other kids tried their best to reach out. They made every effort to bring him into their little world, to stand by him whenever he needed support. Slowly, Yu began to open up, letting his guard down bit by bit, until he finally started seeing them as his new family. But their fragile happiness didn't last. A deadly virus swept through, killing anyone 13 and older. The younger kids were the only ones left alive, but their safety was short-lived. Vampires took advantage of the chaos, capturing the children and raising them as livestock. The orphanage was no exception. Yu and the rest of the kids were taken away and forced into an underground city, where a new nightmare was waiting for them. The first scene shows a plane crashing in the middle of Tokyo, the biggest city in Japan at the time. A few minutes before that happened, life in Tokyo was normal and filled with people leading totally normal lives. However, just as the crash was happening, the entire city fell into chaos and despair as the adults suddenly started collapsing in the middle of the street and dying, with cars, trucks, and lorries flying and crashing everywhere. In just a few minutes, the entire city is thrown into pandemonium and filled with vampires previously hiding in the shadows, roaming all over what's left of the city of Tokyo. Shortly afterward, a group of toddlers from a nearby orphanage is seen running through some alleyways, avoiding as much contact with people as possible just to get to their home in time and check in with their director. At one point in their trip, one of them stops to witness a stallkeeper vomit blood from his mouth and die. But rather than help the guy, he joins the others and runs as quickly as he can to get to the orphanage in time. Once they get to the orphanage, the blonde amongst them, Mikhaila Hayakuya, rushes to check up on their unconscious director as the vampires address the survivors about the virus outbreak, while the dark-haired dude, the one who witnessed the stallkeeper's death the other time, watches over the remaining kids. As the vampires continue addressing the public about the effects of the virus, they all hear footsteps approaching them from beyond the door and wait to see what happens next. Very soon, two vampires not only barge into the room but also abduct them, as well as several other kids from various homes, and drive them to their world in armored trucks. 4 years after the incident, Yuichiro, or Yu for short, as well as several other kids, get accustomed to living life as a ready-made blood bag, ready to be tested every morning and extracted by the vampires in their blood extraction facility. On one such morning, Yu, alongside his partner, Mikhaila, or Mika, and hundreds of other kids, is tested by the facility guards and cleared for extraction. Upon getting past the main guard post, the duo enters a facility and has their blood drawn for consumption by the vampires later on. Soon after undergoing their usual morning routine, Yu and Mika help each other out of the facility. But while Mika drinks the disgusting juice that the vampires provided them for nourishment, Yu throws it away and complains all over. Mika, on the other hand, tells Yu, who's rather defiant, that their living conditions aren't as bad as he claims they are. Not only are they safe in the vampire world, but they also get to live with their families. To him, that's all the luxury he wants in the world. As Mika continues yapping, Yu hurls his juice box at him, but as soon as Mika dodges it, the juice box lands amid two random kids scribbling something on the floor, and Yu calls to them. Just before they answer him, two vampires pass by, step on the kids' hands, injuring them, and have Yu try to get them to apologize. Irritated by Yu's feeble attempts to subjugate them, one of the vamps holds Yu up to his face and tips him over the bridge they're standing on, all while Mika begs him to let Yu go. Thankfully, before the vampire drops Yu to his death, a noble vampire, whom Mika calls Lord Farid, shows up to say hi to his favorite blood bag, aka Mika. As usual, Mika welcomes his master and tells him a little about what's happening there. Shortly after getting past that, Farid asks Mika, the boy with exquisite blood, if he'd be coming over to his mansion again that night, and Mika happily agrees to do that. Happy to hear that, Farid asks if Yu will also be joining them. Before Yu spews nonsense from his mouth, Mika covers it and tells Farid that Yu is too shy to show up at that point. With all that said, Farid dismisses them and returns to his mansion. On their way home, Yu asks Mika why he apologized to the vampire who was about to kill him, and Mika says it's because there's no way for a human to physically overpower a vampire. Soon after, Yu continues spewing more nonsense, and Mika warns him to stop thinking he's Zoro or something. Thereafter, Yu asks about Farid, and Mika tells him that they have a commensal relationship, meaning the man gives Mika everything he wants, including good food, in exchange for his blood. Having heard this, Yu punches Mika in the mouth and walks away, refusing to listen to anything else he has to say. Later that evening, Akane, the third friend, visits Yu, who's chilling somewhere random, and asks him why he's not with Mika. Yu tells her it's because he doesn't really care about the idiot, but then the girl talks about family, and reminds him about how important everyone from the Hyakuya orphanage is. Just then, Yu recalls his first time at the orphanage way back before the plague, and remembers how awkward it was for him to warm up to everyone, who all took themselves as his family. At one point, Bro even told them how much his parents hated him just to push them away, but this only brought all of them closer to each other. Having remembered such an embarrassing memory, Yu snaps back to the present when Akane urges him to join them for dinner, and only returns home moments later to realize that they're having a pretty rare and delicious curry dish for dinner. When he asks her how she got those ingredients, Akane says Mika brought them for all of them to enjoy. Knowing fully well how far his buddy went to get those ingredients, Yuo gets very sad for him and even curses under his breath. Once dinner's ready and served, Yu refuses to touch his food, even when the others are so happy to chow down their meal. Soon enough, the kid near him notices him moping around, but before she gets to know what's wrong with Yu, the other kids throw tantrums over their birthdays. To keep the dinner table calm, Akane declares that day to be the official birthday for everyone, and they all get to smile one more time. Shortly after the little chaos, one of the kids asks Yu if he knows where Mika is, but just as he's about to lie about Mika's location, something else happens at the dinner table, and they all get distracted with laughter. A few hours later, Mika returns to their home tired and weak, and checks up on Yu, who's still alive, to let him know he's now home. At first, Yu tries to ignore him, telling him that he ate all his food and left him with nothing, but eventually, he lets Mika know he's lying, and then asks him to explain what he had to do to get the ingredients for the curry. Realizing his question needs no answer, Yu suggests they use his blood on their next visit to the mansion, and Mika assures him that it's all good, as long as Yu holds on to his promise to teach those useless vampires a lesson when the time comes. Just then, Yu starts saying all sorts of things about humans being unable to defeat vampires, but Mika stops him, crying softly, and urges him to join him at the dinner table. Soon enough, Mika dishes out some food for both him and Yu, and forces the insistent Yu to eat the curry dinner, so he doesn't go to bed hungry. Thereafter, he presents a special gun he stole from Farid's mansion, citing that it's a gun that can kill vampires, and then shows Yu a full map of the city, which marks the exit. Moments later, while they eat dinner, Mika tells Yu that he snooped around Farid's mansion for a while, and found these items that he just stole. Now that he's there, Mika asks Yu to escape the horrible vampire world with him, and Yu, shocked, asks Mika how they'll survive in the outside world with the virus there. Since they're 12 years old, Mika tells Yu that they'll cross that bridge once they get there, but for now, they have to get themselves, alongside the other kids from the Hyakuya orphanage, out of the vampire world. Having heard Mika's escape plan, Yu playfully calls him a fool for being smart and optimistic at the same time. But just then, Akane wakes up, spots Mika with Yu, and welcomes him back home. Upon seeing the look on Akane's face, Yu finally decides to do the needful, so he agrees to indulge himself in Mika's escape plan. Happy to finally have his buddy on his plan, Mika, Akane, and Yu wake all of the other kids up and manage to sneak themselves out of the house and into some weird parts of the vampire world. Somewhere along the way, the kids stop to admire the beautiful night scenery of the vampire world before they finally ask Mika to explain where he's taking them to, as they know it's forbidden to walk outside at night. In response, Yu and Mika assure them that they're finally getting out of the vampire world that night, and urge them to continue following both of them till they eventually get out. Having heard all these things, the kids happily talk about the wonderful things they do once they're out of that horrible place. At one point, they all run into some guards, and manage to hide themselves out of sight to avoid getting into trouble. Once they're in the clear, they continue their journey till they get to a brightly lit passageway at the end of a dark tunnel. With only a few steps left to freedom, Yu and Mika, alongside the other kids, proudly step into the bright passageway, only to meet the dastardly Lord Farid, laughing at their frail escape attempt, and talking about how addictive it is to see the look of despair on their faces. Before Mika can react, Farid swoops past him and sucks all the blood from the body of one of the kids with them till she dies. Pissed, Yu fires a shot at Farid with his gun, but he dodges, recognizes the gun, and praises Mika for stealing both his map and his gun as well. Right after that, he starts spouting some more nonsense about the map being the real deal and whatnot. Just then, Yu forces the kids to run as fast as they can to get to the exit of the vamp world, but unfortunately, Farid gets past Mika and Yu and massacres every single kid, including Akane, who followed Yu and Mika, leaving both boys to regret their decisions for a moment. With nothing left to lose, Mika grabs the gun from Yu and runs toward Farid to take him out with it. Just as he's about to do that, Farid stabs Mika in the heart, slices his hand off, and gets ready to suck out the remaining blood. Before long, Yu grabs the gun, shoots Farad in the head, making him unconscious, and then checks up on Mika, who's now half dead and gasping for air. In his final moments, Mika begs Yu to run away while he still can, so they don't die in vain, but Yu does his best to drag his best buddy out of there with him. Eventually, Mika manages to convince Yu to run for dear life, and Yu, left with no choice, makes a run for it, screaming at the top of his lungs till he returns to the outside snow-filled world. There, he scans the cold world for any signs of life, and thankfully, Ichinose Guren, a lieutenant from the Japanese Imperial Demon Army, shows up and gives him an offer to join his ranks so they can use him to eradicate the vampires. Yu, upon hearing this, hugs the man so tightly that he just happily agrees to do anything to annihilate the vampires who took his family away from him. 4 years after joining Jida, Yu finally emerged as a bona fide member of Jida, ready to take down some lowly vampires. Sometime later, Yu continues living life haunted by the memories of his past family members from the orphanage, who died at the hands of the noble vampire bastard, Farad, having relived the same scene of watching all their lives get taken from them over and over again, especially Mika's final message to him before he was sucked clean by the bastard. Yu snaps back to reality and expresses just how haunted that scene makes him feel, ever since he survived the massacre 4 years ago. Moments after his memory recollection, Yu walks into a ruin to assist 2 of his colleagues who are currently trapped fighting a horseman of the apocalypse monster. When they notice him there with them, they urge him to leave, but Yu, ever so stubborn, ignores them, unsheathes his blade, and takes the fight to the horseman of the apocalypse. In no time, Yu not only dodges all its attacks skillfully, but also slices the monster in half, killing it in the process, and saving his buddies from an untimely death. The next day, Yu gets suspended for violating orders from his superiors the previous day, and is sentenced to begin studying in a normal school within the Demon Army base. One time, while class is ongoing, Yu loudly complains about the class being boring, and the homeroom teacher, who hears all his complaints, tries to speak some sense into his head. Yu, on the other hand, gives the teacher some attitude, which pisses him off, causing the teacher to threaten Yu with a suspension. Like a bee who has just found nectar, Yu happily begs the teacher to suspend him so he can finally have a reason to be out of school. But then the teacher loses his cool and tells Yu to shut the hell up. Just as Yu is about to respond, a pink-haired lady sitting behind Yu taps his back and shows him some writings in a notebook, telling Yu that she is Hiragi Shinoa, an army surveillance officer sent there to track and monitor his progress in school. Shocked, Yu asks for more explanation, and Shinoa threatens to report him to the army, so they can extend Yu's suspension if he is unwilling to cooperate. This time, Yu throws another tantrum so loud that the teacher drops his chalk and threatens to harm him if he does not stop all the nonsense he is saying. By this time, Yu realizes he truly has no other choice, so he sits and comports himself. As if that was not enough, Shinoa also adds that his suspension will not be lifted until he makes at least one friend, adding to Yu's problems. Unable to refuse the order, Yu just stares out of the school's window, recalling the first time he met Guren and his men in the snow on the night he escaped. Moments after meeting Guren and his men that night, little Yu asked them why they were still alive, as he thought humanity was extinct already, and in response, Guren told him that the vampires lied to him. While it is true that the virus shrunk humanity to a mere tenth of what it was, bringing forth monsters of immeasurable proportions to Earth, humanity somehow found a way to begin its resurrection. Now that they have found a haven, Guren plans to gather the remnants of humankind and seize control of the entire planet, just as it used to be. Around this time, little Yu asks Guren to introduce himself, and right after doing so, Guren gives him the offer to kill the vampires and clothe him. 4 years later, Yu curses Guren for not keeping his promise to make him stronger, and for neglecting him while he keeps doing big things. As soon as class is over, Yu places his head on his table and ignores the other students rushing outside to go take ice cream. Just then, Shinoa shows up, teasing him to follow those goody two-shoes students and make friends with them. But when Yu tells her not to act like she knows him, Shinoa moves on to narrate Yu's background story to him, including the fact that he has an issue approaching others and becoming close with them just to avoid losing them. Upon hearing her say those things, Yu confronts her and tells her to ask Guren to enlist him into the Jida, as he believes he is strong enough to kill the vampires now. To shut him up, Shinoa gives Yu a disconcerting letter from Guren personally, and when he reads it, Yu squeezes it and leaves the class, complaining like a kid. Moments later, he catches Shinoa following him again to the cloakroom and tries to get her off his arse. Since she has been assigned to be his army surveillance officer, Shinoa tells Yu that she unfortunately cannot let him be on his own. However, just as they are about to leave, they hear 3 guys bullying a nerd nearby, and Yu pretends to ignore it to give Shinoa a false sense of judgment about who he truly is. As the bullying gets more intense, Yu eventually turns back and asks the guys to stop. When the leader of the bullies notices him, they flock around him and threaten to make him their toy if he does not calm down. Yu, who is itching for a fight, urges them to fight him so he can teach them a lesson, but just at the last minute, Shinoa warns Yu against beating up civilians, as it will extend his suspension, and Yu, unable to do that, allows the guys to beat him up. Some moments later, Yu and the bullied kid, Yoichi, go grocery shopping for their dorm. On their way back, Yu complains about the incident earlier, and then asks Yoichi, who keeps apologizing, what his deal is. Yoichi claims that he is not being bullied, and Yu does not believe him. To provide some context, Yoichi tells Yu that he is letting himself get bullied by Yamanaka because he needs to join his circle of friends. After getting to know who this Yamanaka is, the guy who punched Yu, he asks Yoichi to tell him what he wants from the bully, and Yoichi tells him that after failing the entrance exam to the Demon Army Academy, he wants Yamanaka to help him get another shot at the entrance exam, since he has been promised a spot in the vampire extermination unit known as the Moon Demon Company. Hearing this, Yu drops his drinks and promises to beat Guren's arse the next time he sees him, but Yoichi soon gets serious and tells Yu that he wants to join the Demon Army so he can avenge his sister, who sacrificed herself just to save him. After hearing him yap about being a wuss, Yu hits Yoichi on the head, tells him he did the right thing by not letting his sister's sacrifice go to waste, and then advises him not to join the army, saying it is not what his sister would have wanted. As Yoichi is about to argue, Yu tells him that young boys have no business slaughtering vampires and leaves. Before he goes far, however, an explosion occurs within the school premises, and almost immediately, the PA system comes on, warning all students and teachers to evacuate the school immediately, as a vampire from a nearby biological research facility has escaped. Realizing that there is a vampire loose, Yu ignores Shinoa's warnings to evacuate so she can call the Moon Demon Army, and tells her that he is going to kill the vampire just to show Guren what he is made of. Just as Shinoa is about to talk him out of it, Yu sprints back to his locker room, navigates his way through the thick crowd of students, and recovers his demon blade and gun. Seconds later, he hears a student screaming in one of the classrooms nearby and rushes there, only to see the escaped vampire preparing herself to feed on an unconscious lady. After exchanging a few words with the vampire, Yu tries to slice her with his blade, but the vampire easily dodges his strike and play fights with him. Somewhere along the fight, Yu manages to cut her hand off, but just as she attaches it back on, Yu turns to Yamanaka and tells him to pick the injured girl up and run, so the vampire does not get to feed on her. By this time, the coward, who is scared stiff, tells Yu that he lied about being promised a spot in the Moon Demon Army, and only said that so others would fear him. As the vampire decides to get serious, she arms herself with a small iron rebar, attacks Yu, and gets sliced in the belly. After slicing her again, Yu fires a few shots, but she dodges all of them, heals herself, and promises to return stronger. Just as she is about to feed on the girl, Yoichi appears and pushes her aside. Furious, the vampire moves to kill him, but Yu blocks her attack and thanks Yoichi for saving everyone. At that moment, the vampire grabs Yu by the neck and throws him off the balcony. After crashing into a shrub, Yu stabs her with his sword, but she assures him the scratch is meaningless. Before she can suck his blood, Guren arrives and kills her with a cursed weapon. He insults Yu for thinking he could kill a vampire without one, but Yu tells him to mind his business. Guren then thanks him for reducing their casualties. Soon after, Yu gets up and tells Guren to add him to the Moon Demon Company. Guren refuses, saying he cannot accept someone who does not work well in a team. Just as Yu tries to argue, Yoichi shouts his name in relief, glad to see he's doing okay. He then crashes into Yu, hugging him, and Shinoa explains to Guren that Yoichi is Yu's first friend, so he should keep to his promise. Meanwhile, in a trance, Yu sees Mika and the others smiling, happy that he has found a friend. Before leaving, Mika's soul urges him to protect this one, and departs with the others. Just then, Yu wakes up in the sickbay with Shinoa and Yoichi by his side. Moments later, Shinoa congratulates them for being accepted into the vampire extermination unit. Together, Yu, Shinoa, and Yoichi huddle and cheer, beginning their new journey as comrades. A few days later, Yamanaka and two of his lackeys explore a restricted area of their school, hidden in the sewers, purely out of curiosity. After walking through the sewers for a while, the trio finally spots a weird door covered with posters and approaches it. While one of them, Yuji, tries to force the door open, Yamanaka and the other guy develop cold feet and abort the mission to avoid trouble. However, as Yuji is about to leave, the door suddenly opens slightly, and the foolish dude enters it. The next day, the girl Yu saved from the lady vampire earlier meets him on the roof of their school to personally hand him her declaration of love. Yu, not knowing what to do, collects the love letter from the girl, but just as he tries to speak to her, the girl runs away. Thereafter, Shinoa pops out of nowhere and teases Yu for being popular with the ladies, even going as far as anticipating that Yu is going to break the girl's heart sometime in the future. As Yu tries to confront her, she calls him a virgin and lets him know that that being one in the army is evil. When asked why, Shinoa tells him that the Jita urges people to pursue relationships so they can repopulate the earth quickly and create more soldiers to fill their armies. Hearing this, Yu asks Shinoa why he is still attending the boring school if he has already landed a spot in the vampire extermination unit. In response, Shinoa tells him to direct all complaints to the lieutenant colonel, and Yu tells her that Guren is never at his office. Even so, Shinoa tells him not to shout at her, as his training for the extermination unit has already begun. Confused yet again, Yu asks her what she means by training, and Shinoa, after telling him that the training is to help him obtain what he truly desires, summons the demon she has made a contract with, Shikamaduji, then unsheathes her death scythe to show off to Yu. Having seen Shinoa's flashy powers, Yu recognizes the scythe as one of the infernal arms that carries a vampire-killing curse, and Shinoa reminds him that she is a member of the vampire extermination unit. When Yu starts getting funny ideas about taking shortcuts to get his cursed weapon by force, Shinoa tells him he cannot defeat a vampire alone. But just as she warns him about learning teamwork first, Yu gets cocky and challenges Shinoa to a duel so he can take her weapon for himself. At this point, Shinoa laughs at him and warns that he cannot use an infernal arm inhabited by someone else's contracted demon. But Yu, ever the airhead, attacks her nonetheless and gets beaten up by Shinoa, who is kind of impressed by how skilled Yu is with the sword. At the end of the duel, Yu marvels at the beauty of the weapon and walks off unscathed. Moments later, while they stroll through a random corridor, Yu asks Shinoa if her weapon is good enough to defeat any type of vampire, and Shinoa says no, citing that on the battlefield, the vampires are also equipped with stronger weapons, unlike the unarmed vampire Yu fought earlier in the school. Having heard this, Yu loses his mind over how ridiculous it is for vampires to be armed, but then Shinoa states that that is why Guren always wants people who can work in a unit on his team. As their conversation continues, Yoichi, who is being chased by Yamanaka and one of his lackeys, runs toward Yu and Shinoa and stops behind them. Once they catch up, they tell Yoichi that they are serious about being his henchmen, but then Yoichi says he is not cut out for something like that. Just then, Yamanaka recognizes Yu and calls him his boss. This makes Shinoa a little jealous as she feels left out of the crowd, but Yu, ignoring her, reminds the that they are not people to be trusted. While that is true, Yamanaka tells Yu that they do need someone to help them, but Yu continues trash-talking them for being shameless and asking the guy they beat up not too long ago for help. In any case, Yamanaka drops his pride and tells Yu that he needs his help because their friend, Yuji, went inside the forbidden chamber under the school and never came back out. Confused, Yu asks for an explanation, but just as Yamanaka is about to give him one, Shinoa interrupts, teases him, and lets them know that she knows they did this as a dare. As for their friend, Yuji, Shinoa says that he is most likely already captured by the enemy. Hearing this, Yamanaka begs Shinoa to do something about Yuji's situation, and Shinoa only makes things worse by telling him that his buddy might get the death penalty. Moments later, as Shinoa takes Yu and Yoichi down to the forbidden chamber, she tells the curious Yu that it is one of the 7 mysteries of the school. In other words, the Forbidden Chamber is a place no normal human should ever open, as it is used as a training facility for members of the Vampire Extermination Unit. As such, if a fool like Yuji enters the place, then he will be possessed by a demon. By this time, Shinoa reminds Yu that even though he has begun his training for the Extermination Squad already, they are about to move to the next stage. For this next stage, Shinoa continues taking Yu toward the underground shrine, citing that it is a space converted from a flood prevention area into a training area by the extermination unit. At the same time, Shinoa tells Yu that the entire school itself is a training area for the unit, meaning they can hold a demon underground and only recruit those students who are naturally unaffected by its evil energy. A few minutes later, the 3 of them finally arrive at the door to the Forbidden Chamber, where Shinoa tells them that only members of the Vampire Extermination Unit, or VEU, can enter. As for Yuji, who was not recruited, she says he is most likely a mindless murderous demon, as the demon would have taken over his heart. Despite hearing all those serious warnings and scary stuff from Shinoa, Yu damns the consequences and presses forward to defeat one of the demons, to acquire an infernal arm of his own, just so he can get revenge on the vampires for killing his family. Shinoa tries to warn him against entering the chamber alone, but Yu eventually gets in and finds an already possessed Yuji holding an axe and standing in the middle of a huge magic circle, surrounded by several other infernal arms. To stop him from doing anything stupid, Shinoa warns Yu to let the extermination unit deal with Yuji, but Yu, eager to make a contract with the axe in Yuji's hand, presses forward to attack the demon. Shinoa, worried sick, tells Yoichi to call the extermination unit for backup. Seconds after getting down to Yuji's level, Yu gets the demon's attention, attacks him, and gathers his breath before launching his next strike. Just before he does that, Shinoa stops him and warns that if he touches an infernal arm with his bare hands, the demon will possess him. But Yu assures her that he will not lose to some demon. To help him understand the severity of the situation, Shinoa tells him that demons feed on the corrupt desires within a weak heart and will take advantage of his thirst for revenge, which is why Gurren will not give him a cursed weapon yet. Despite hearing all that, Yu becomes more determined to show Shinoa what he is made of. With no hesitation, he hands over his weapon to Shinoa and attacks Yuji with his bare hands. Eventually, he touches Yuji's weapon and instantly gets teleported to an alternate reality where he is his younger self. And everyone from the orphanage, including Akane and Mika, are all alive and waiting for him to join them at the dinner table. For a few moments, Yu is shocked as he struggles to grasp the situation. In time, though, he sits with the others and tries to take a bite of food. Just then, Mika asks about his revolution and some other weird questions that make Yu a little suspicious. Before he eats, he stops and asks if they have been alive this whole time, and Mika tells him that they are all dead, blaming Yu for running away and refusing to avenge them. While in the thick of things, Mika approaches Yue and offers to lend him power, even engulfing him in an aura of black flame. However, before Yu loses himself to the demon, he snaps out of the illusion and assures the demon that the Mika he knows would never do something like that, as he is smart but also stupidly nice. As Yu keeps holding Mika's neck, the whole room transforms into its original dark form, and the demon finally lets go of the deception. Moments later, Yu wakes up to reality and shocks Shinoa, who never thought he could break free from the demon's deception on his own. She explains the situation to him, telling him that he managed to exorcise the demon through sheer willpower, which means that although he is now entitled to keep the weapon, Gurren still needs to assign him a cursed weapon officially. Now that he has proven himself to Shinoa by handling the infernal arm and saving his teammate, she tells him he is going to begin training at the vampire extermination unit school the next day, and this comes as good news to Yu. By this time, Yu reassures his dead family that he is going to make sure he learns how to properly kill a vampire this time. Around that same time, Lord Farid, who did not die from Yu's gunshot to the head, walks along the passageway. Mika and the others tried to escape through 4 years ago and calls someone very familiar, Mika. To nobody's surprise, he spots a grown Mika standing alone in that passageway and tells him about Yu and where he is now, corrupted by the humans. To stop the bastard from talking, Mika, now a vampire, threatens to cut his throat, and Farid, shutting up quickly, asks how he is going to weave his story now that he has found out Yu is alive. As usual, Mika refuses to answer such a stupid question and just goes on about his day. Some days after, a horseman of the apocalypse monster attacks a small refugee settlement and threatens to wipe out the entire populace. Right before the huge monster kills a teenage girl, Mika and his vampire colleagues show up and decimate the monster as quickly as possible, saving the girl in the process. In the aftermath of the attack, one of Mika's colleagues approaches him and talks about the humans as livestock to be owned and protected. With Mika remaining silent, the fool continues yapping about Mika's power coming from the fact that he became a vampire by drinking the blood of the third progenitor, Cruel Tepes. When he asks the indifferent Mika about it, Mika ignores him and tells the other one, who just accused him of attacking the monster alone and taking all the glory, that he is not interested in glory or honor like them. With this, the colleagues leave Mika and announce to the refugees that their settlement will now be under the protection of the vampires as long as they give them their blood. While Mika chills out somewhere else, the girl he saved earlier from the monster attack approaches him, thanks him for saving her, and offers her blood for him to drink. As Mika stares at the poor young lady, he recalls one of his memories with Yu back when they were younger and talking about launching a revolution against the vampires. After warning Yu not to attack the vampires carelessly due to their immense strength, Mika tells him about his naive escape plan, and fast forwards to the time they all got in trouble because of him. Moments after forcing poor Yu to run away to survive, Mika, who was half dead at the time, passed out, and seconds later, 3 other vampires showed up to assess the situation. Realizing that Mika is the cause of Farid's demise, they make a move to finish him off. However, just before they get to do that, the vampire queen, Cruel Tepes, shows up, stops them from killing the boy, and tastes his blood to see that he will soon be dead. Thereafter, she calls on Farid, who has been playing dead the entire time, to explain himself. Just then, Farid gets back up, greets the vampire queen, and exchanges a few snide remarks with her. Once they get past the niceties, Cruel asks Farid if he was truly shot by a human child, making fun of him. Farid admits it, and she finally realizes that he must have let Yu escape while leaving Mika half dead on purpose just to mess with her. As she continues questioning him, Farid reminds her that toying with the curse of the Seraphs is against the law and threatens to report her to the Progenitor Council. Unable to allow that, Cruel gives him a chance to stop yapping, but when he does not stop, she attacks him, slicing his hand off his body, and threatens to kick his head off if he ever breathes a word of what just happened to the council. At this point, Farid succumbs to Cruel's overwhelming power and promises not to interfere any longer. With that settled, Cruel lets him go, and Farid picks up his hand before leaving Cruel to deal with the dying Mika. Shortly after he is gone, Cruel asks Mika if he would like to gain the eternal life she has to offer, Mika says no. Even so, Cruel does not give him a choice as she bites her tongue, releasing her blood, and feeds it into Mika's mouth. As soon as young Mika tastes Cruel's blood, his transformation process begins, and in due time, he transforms into a vampire. Now, back in the present, Yu bumps into a pink-haired angry dude while walking through the corridor of his school, and stops to see who the telephone pole is. Just then, the angry dude punches Yu in the mouth for being stupid, and Yu ultimately gets into a fight with him. Moments after the fight, he joins Yoichi, who is waiting for him at the Vampire Extermination Unit's training school. When Yoichi asks what happened to his bruised face, Yu lies that he bumped into an ugly telegraph pole. When they get to the entrance of the school, Shinoa notices the bruise and asks about it, only for Yu to tell her the same lie. Once they get past that, they talk about starting their training for the Moon Demon Company, and Yu talks some nonsense about going out to fight the vampires instantly. In time, Shinoa takes the two boys to their first class with Guren as their teacher. Guren introduces them to the class before yapping about how they stopped their supervisor from attending class and whatnot. After hearing Guren call them the dumb and the wuss, Yu takes to the podium and tells the class that he is not there to make friends with anyone. He adds that even though he does not know what they are studying there, he will be taking the best weapon for himself, so they should be prepared for his coming. Having heard all this nonsense, Guren beats the mess out of him and asks about his lessons from general education class. With no response given, he tells Yu to get into his seat. After walking through some seats, Yu ultimately spots the pink-haired angry dude he fought earlier sitting beside him. Naturally, things between them get spicy again, but as another fight breaks out, Guren asks Shinoa why her trainees are fighting. Shinoa says it is because Kimizuki Shiho, the pink-haired dude, provoked Yuichiro to gauge his ability, and she just had to hide and enjoy the show. Having had enough, Guren kicks the life out of Yu and Shiho and leaves them unconscious for the rest of the class. About an hour later, Shiho, after getting treated by the nurse, visits Guren in his office to talk about the Infernal Arms aptitude test being held the following week. Upon getting Guren's attention, Shiho asks if it is still true that he will be granted a trial for the top-ranked Black Demon series. Tired of hearing the same question, Guren asks him why he is so desperate for power. Shiho reminds him that it is because he needs money to cure his sister, who is infected with the Apocalypse virus. Since the Moon Demon Company is elite, Shiho can access treatment normally unavailable to the public. Even so, Guren advises Shiho to forget about touching an infernal arm, as it will only feed on his desires. Furious, Shiho asks if Guren thinks Yu will do better than him. Guren, unsure, says he does not know, as Yu has once broken free from a demon, so he deserves some credit. Hearing this, Shiho insists that he is stronger than Yu, but Guren reminds him that power alone is not enough to win the war they are about to fight. He will need friends very soon, or else he will be possessed by a demon, and it will be over for him. By this time, Guren unleashes the demon inside his cursed sword, and lets the purple miasma fill the entire room to give Shiho a glimpse of how strong his demon is. After releasing the aura, Guren tells him that demons thrive on desperation and rage. If Shiho does not keep his desires in check, he will be swallowed whole and turned into a demon himself. Sometime later, the recruits gather in a practice area to have their abilities judged in preparation for the aptitude test next week. Seconds before the test starts, the instructor briefs them on the dangers of poor performance. Yu tells his teammates that he will be taking the strongest weapons for himself. The instructor begins the test by asking them to pair up. Unfortunately for Yu, he ends up paired with Shiho. With no other choice, they get chained together in preparation. Once all students are paired, the instructor places them in a hollow space and unleashes cursed army puppets to hit the participants. To pass the test, both partners must minimize hits and work together to defeat the puppets. After underestimating the clumsy puppets, Yu and Shiho quickly realize they are not in sync and get hit in the head. After deducting 10 points from their team, the instructor receives word from the hospital and stops the test. She instructs Shiho to head there immediately, as his sister's condition has deteriorated. When Shiho tries to continue the test, Yu, shocked to hear that the guy has a sister, stops him and tells him not to forsake her. Eventually, Shiho listens, especially after Yu punches him, and heads to the hospital. Thankfully, the doctors manage to stabilize his sister and keep her alive for another day, but they warn that something must be done soon. Shiho begs them to keep her stable for a while longer, promising to transfer her to a better facility once he joins the Moon Demon Army. Later that evening, Yu and Shiho bond over their family issues. Yu teases Shiho and promises that even though they got a bad score, they will still join the Demon Army. He continues encouraging the saddened Shiho, who thanks him for reigniting his spark. They exchange a few teasing words and laugh the night off. Elsewhere, the progenitor blood vampires gather for a meeting to discuss the new threat, the Japanese Imperial Demon Army, or JIDA for short. As the meeting's host talks about all that JIDA is doing, including experimenting on the Seraphs of the End, Mika walks into the building to continue listening. The woman keeps yapping about the plague that happened 8 years ago, repeating itself. In time, Cruel, the vampire queen, steps forward and declares war on the Japanese Imperial Demon Army to preserve the balance in the world. Meanwhile, Mika, having heard the declaration of war, decides to rescue Yu, the only family he has left, from the war and the Seraphs of the End. Elsewhere, the higher-ups of the Jaida host their meeting to discuss the state of affairs within their protected regions. As the meeting progresses, Hiragi Shinya, Major General of the Jaida, gets up to make his report on the suspicious vampire activity around the Kansai region. Before he gets to that, he looks over to Ichinose Guren, who is fast asleep during the meeting, and has his seat partner wake him up. Once Guren is back up, he gets up and asks the members of the board if the boring meeting is already over. In response, the great General Hiragi Tenri, the highest boss in the room, warns Guren to watch his mouth so he does not get slapped or something, but then Guren boldly tells him that he was just bored with the meeting. As the tension between the great general and Guren increases, Shinya intervenes and calms the boss down so he can continue with his report. By this time, Guren tells the others to forward the minutes of the meeting to him when they are done, and prepares to leave rudely. When Shinya tries to scold him for acting poorly, Guren reminds him that mere people like him from the Ichinose clan do not have any power in such meetings, since the almighty Hiragi family is the ones who hold the reins of the Japanese Imperial Demon Army. With nothing more to say, another disgruntled member calls him a worthless scum, and Guren just leaves the hypocrites to continue their yap meeting. At the entrance to the council house, Guren is attacked by Yu, who is pissed at him for leaving him alone for 10 straight days, after promising him an infernal arm, but he easily dodges and parries the little dude away. Upon hearing the Nimrod yap about getting an infernal arm, Guren asks if he is that into revenge, and Yu assures him that that is the only thing he lives for. Since it is better to leave Yu out of the Hiragi's reach, Guren decides to just give the dude what he wants and be done with it. With that, he promises to get Yu to form a contract with a demon so he can be shipped to the front lines. After all, Yu is the one who has to worry about dying, not him. Upon hearing this, Yue gets insanely happy to be put to good use finally. But before he is dismissed, Guren teaches him a lesson for trying to hit his superiors and leaves him unconscious at the entrance. When he comes to, Yu visits the cafeteria, but then Shinoa, who just finished eating, spots him rubbing his head from afar and starts teasing him as usual. For the most part, Yu ignores her, but eventually, she congratulates him for getting his contract with the demon approved and assures him that Guren always keeps his promises. Hearing this, Yu knows he is finally one step closer to killing those bloodsuckers, so he steals his resolve and gets ready for what is next. Elsewhere, Farid finds Mika at the loading bay, checking out the aircraft they, as vampires, will be using for their first campaign in the war against the corrupt humans, and starts yapping about Mika finally meeting his precious little angel. To avoid indulging the words of a brainless oaf, Mika ignores Farid and just leaves, listening intently as Farid talks about how he hopes to see Mika handle his precious angel when they eventually meet. Moments later, Mika enters the suburbs to visit the home where his younger self, Akane, Yu, and the other kids who were killed in that incident used to stay. Sadly, upon getting there, he sees two new kids who are scared stiff of him, a vampire, and leaves shortly after they shoo him away. The next day at school, Sayuri, Yu, and Shihao's instructor returns all their written exam results before ending class for the day, and assures them that their results will affect the rank of the infernal arm they will receive. As soon as Yu sees his score, which is a perfect 0 out of 100, he tries to cover his answer booklet so nobody spots it. Unfortunately for him, it is already too late, as Shinoa, shocked by how ridiculous his score is, yanks his booklet from under his arms and shows it to the others, just so they can marvel over how amazing Yu must be to score 0 out of 100. For a few minutes, everyone murmurs about the new best dumb in their class, but when Yu gets his booklet back, he calls Shinoa a mean biatch, and Shinoa, who does not care about his grades, tells him she only did it to help him get more popular since he seems to struggle with making friends. Yu tells her he never asked for that, and says he does not need comrades to kill vampires. However, Shinoa assures him that he cannot defeat vampires without teamwork. As the duo argues, Yoichi shows up and mutters something about Yu being captured by vampires as a kid, and that being the reason for his poor Japanese. Before Yu can defend himself, Shiho calls him an empty airhead, and Yu tells him to show everyone his scores so they can see how intelligent he really is. To nobody's surprise, Shiho got perfect scores in all 3 subjects and made a few sarcastic comments about Yu's score. Before long, the two of them challenge each other to yet another one of their meaningless fights. But this time, Guren shows up unannounced and complains about the rowdiness of the class. Sayuri welcomes him to class, and Guren, upon checking things out, spots Yu and Shiho at each other's throats again. Once Yu spots Guren entering, he stops fighting Shiho and asks where his infernal arm is. Before Guren responds, Shiho pushes Yu aside and asks the lieutenant colonel why he abandoned class for 10 days, now that they believe they are ready to form contracts. Guren replies by asking if they think they are cut out for that, and Yu assures him that he is. Somehow, Yu and Shiho end up punching each other in the gut, but Guren asks Sayuri if they have built up resistance to a demon's temptation. Sayuri says that while she cannot properly gauge their strength, Yu and Shiho are far stronger than she was at 16. As for the rest, Sayuri tells Guren that the student with the highest stability against demons is none other than Saotome Yoichi. Hearing this, Guren gets a crazy idea to test their mental strength against demons. He unsheathes his cursed sword and warns that if they die during the test, they can blame their lack of training. Then, he plunges the cursed sword into the classroom floor and transforms the classroom into a hell-like space. Almost instantly, many students collapse under the demonic aura, but somehow, Shinoa, Yu, Yoichi, and Shiho remain standing until Guren ends the test. After returning the classroom to normal, Guren tells those still conscious that they need more training to receive infernal arms. As for those still standing, he says they will get a trial for the Black Demon series that instant. With that, Guren names the survivors: Yu, Yoichi, Shiho, and Shinoa. He mutters some sarcastic comment at Shinoa and leaves with them to begin the tryout. On their way to the cursed basement, Sayuri voices her concerns about giving Yoichi a trial, and Guren asks if she has a problem with his decision. When she says she does not think Yoichi has the strength to accept a demon, Guren warns Yoichi that if he is not strong enough, then he will die. After enduring more grumbles from Sayuri, Guren turns to Yoichi and asks if he is still eager to avenge his sister, who was killed by a vampire. When Yoichi says yes, Guren asks if he is willing to put his life on the line or quit if he is afraid of dying. Before Yoichi responds, Yu advises him to quit, saying, "Nice guys do not belong with them." But after remembering the moment his sister was killed, Yoichi tells them that he is not going anywhere because he wants to get stronger so he does not lose anyone else. At this point, Yu realizes Yoichi is just like him, and they all continue toward the basement elevator. On their ride down, Yu tells Yoichi not to get cold feet, but then Shiho tries to calm him down with big talk. Shinoa calls Shiho out for needing his desk to stay up during the cursed sword test, and Yoichi agrees. When Shiho tries to bully Yoichi, Yu joins in, and Guren warns him not to get too comfortable, since the demon he is about to face is not like the one from before. Yu agrees, and they arrive at the ritual room. There, Guren explains the cursed space, where weapons with the strongest demons are stored, and Yu asks a few questions that bore Guren. With no time to waste, Guren tells them to choose a weapon and step into the ritual circle. Once they touch the weapon, the ritual begins. If they win, they gain the demon's power. If they lose, they either become a demon or die, and Guren promises to kill them if they become the former. With that, Yu picks a special sword, mutters a few words, places his hand on it, and draws it to begin the ritual. At the same time, Shiho and Yoichi pick a pair of daggers and a bow to begin theirs. Moments after picking up his cursed weapon, which is a bow, the demon in the bow takes Yoichi back to the same memory that keeps haunting him, the memory of the night his big sister was drained to death by a nonchalant vampire. This time, however, the name of the vampire who drained her is revealed to be Lacus, and moments after draining the poor girl, Lacus and his partner, Renee, leave like nothing happened. Shortly afterward, Yoichi, still stuck under the bed, calls his dead sister, but to his surprise, she opens her eyes, calls his full name, and tells little Yoichi that they are currently reliving his innermost memory. Around this time, the current teenage Yoichi is seen standing in the corner of the room, staring at the demon possessing his sister's body, carrying his younger self up, and telling him that his sister is dead and forgotten. While Yoichi continues taking his test, Shiho's luck is not much better either. At the beginning of his test, Shiho finds himself in his younger sister Mirai's ward, apologizing for waking her up and making sure she is doing okay. Just when he decides to get them some food, Mirai calls him back and suggests that he just pull the plug if she is that much of a burden. Hearing this, Shiho tells her never to think that way, but at that point, the demon possessing her frail body reveals itself and tells Shiho that it knows he is a greedy human who only thinks of his benefit. By this time, Shiho realizes he has been speaking to the demon all along, and the demon, with nothing more to hide, tells Shiho that the memory he is reliving is the truth within him. Hearing this, Shiho loses his cool and throws a tantrum at the demon. While that happens, Guren, who is quietly observing the state of the students, notices Shiho's fists clenching the daggers and concludes that he will make it out alive. Yu, on the other hand, gets transported to a white space deep within his consciousness. After walking around the space for a few minutes, the demon, posing as Mika, calls his name and takes him to the room where they all used to sleep before the plague happened. Knowing what to expect, Yu tells the demon to cut the nonsense, as he does not have time for its games. Shocked, the demon asks why he does not care much about his family. Yu responds that he is already used to the mind games they like to play, and suggests that the demon surrender its power so the test can end already. The demon smiles, releases all its aura from young Mika, and leaves him unconscious. As Yu tries to get Mika back up, the demonic aura stabs several points in his body. The demon, now in its full miasmic form, notices that Yu has dealt with one of her kind before. After hearing Yu demand her power again, the female demon asks him why he seeks power so much. Yu says it is because he lost the family he never thought he would have. Having heard Yu's pain, she finally decides to give him her power without restraint, but she also warns that he must devote himself more and more to revenge to handle the power she has to give. With that said, the demon repossesses Mika's body and makes the younger Mika, Akane, and the other kids killed by Farid try to convince Yu to stop caring for his new friends, Yoichi and Shiho, and instead relinquish his love to live with them happily ever after in the afterlife. As the negative energy fills the room, Yu, still restrained by the multiple stabs, tries to explain to Akane and the others that he has not forgotten them. To make him prove it, Akane and Mika tell him to relinquish his love for his friends and focus only on revenge. But this time, Yu decides he has had enough. He calls out to the demon and says he needs her power to protect those precious to him. Seconds later, Yu returns to the white space, and the demon finally accepts him, warning that if his heart wavers even for a moment, then his body will be hers. Yu accepts her terms, and the demon, who calls herself Asuramaru, Asura for short, tells Yu to call upon her whenever he needs her power. Before leaving him with his new weapon, Asuramaru shares some information with Yu about the experiments humans are likely carrying out on him. Confused, Yu asks what she means, and the demon warns him never to fully trust a human, as they are deadlier than vampires or demons. After saying that, Asuramaru takes her true humanoid form and tells Yu to open his eyes to reality as they complete their contract. At that moment, Yu wakes up with his new weapon in hand and finds Shihao already up and armed with his daggers. As for Yoichi, he is unfortunately still stuck in his test, just like everyone expected. After reliving the same memory of his sister's death, teenage Yoichi musters the courage to ask for the identity of the demon who possessed her body earlier. The demon reminds him about the Black Demon series test he is currently undergoing in the outside world. When Yoichi remembers this, he chuckles and engages the demon in small talk. The demon tells him that even though he seeks its power, it cannot find any shred of vengeance or hate in him. All it sees is love, stability, and compassion for others' traits it hates. Yoichi tries to argue, but the demon continues pouring negative thoughts into his mind, saying he hates conflicts without a thirst for bloodshed. Upon drawing its conclusions about Yoichi's character, the demon unleashes its aura, urges Yoichi to surrender himself, and stabs him. When Yoichi does not fight back, the demon, disappointed, tells him that it will never accept him as its master. It jerks Yoichi's body awake, smashes the statue containing Yoichi's cursed weapon, and notifies Gurren that the worst has happened. Before fighting, Gurren explains the situation to Yu and Shiho, who are both confused. Yoichi, now possessed by the demon, counts the humans in the room and summons his bow for battle. At the same time, Gurren instructs Yu and Shiho to eliminate Yoichi and the demon inside him as their first mission in the Moon Demon Company. Seconds later, Yoichi fires energy arrows at all three of them, but Gurren easily deflects them. Without wasting more time, he fires more arrows at Shiho and Yu. When they are hit, Gurren mutters about how powerful demons are even without feeding on the lust of their victims. Just then, Shinoa walks in to share her opinion, but Gurren ignores her. Yu reminds him that Yoichi is their comrade and says he is not going to kill him. Gurren tells him not to act noble and just end Yoichi's suffering. He warns that if they sacrifice themselves for Yoichi, it will be in vain because Yoichi will never return. Having heard all that, Yu draws his sword, unleashing its power, and works with Shiho to save Yoichi. While Shiho distracts Yoichi with an attack, Yu approaches from behind. They manage to knock the bow away from Yoichi, but when Yu lets his guard down, Gurren warns that the demon is inside Yoichi, not the weapon. Yoichi slams Yu to the ground. Shiho prepares to kill Yoichi, but Yu stops him. Once they are all back on their feet, Yu begins speaking from the heart, trying to bring Yoichi back. While he does, Shinoa pleads with Gurren to stop the kids from fighting their friend. Gurren agrees but tells her to take responsibility for the decision. When she refuses, he calls her a hypocrite. Meanwhile, Yu, dodging Yoichi's attacks, urges him to resist the demon. The demon forces Yoichi to aim his bow at Yu, who drops his sword and tells Yoichi to shoot him. The demon cackles when Yu likens their situations, both losing their families before their eyes. Seeing Yu drop his weapon, Shiho and Shinoa step in to protect him, but Yoichi keeps aiming at them. Just as he is about to shoot, Gurren calls him a coward for hiding under the bed while his family died. Hearing that, Yoichi's spirit begins to break free from the demon's grip. He remembers his resolve to protect those dear to him and regains control of his body. He misfires the arrow, cries, and hugs Yu tightly, passing the test. Yu welcomes him back, and Gurren, after congratulating Yoichi, kicks Yu in the stomach until he collapses. Shortly afterward, Shinoa teases Gurren about his expression during the test. Gurren ignores her and tells Yoichi and Yu that they now understand the importance of living not for revenge, but to protect their friends. Gurren tells Yu to forget his old family and embrace his new one, saying the future holds better things than the past. Yu agrees to disagree, and Gurren, satisfied, announces that they will soon head to the front lines. Vampires from the Kansai region are planning to reclaim Shinjuku, so they are going to investigate the area. Elsewhere, Mika is seen high up in the aircraft he had been observing earlier, traveling with several vampires to Tokyo to battle the Jaida forces in Ikebukuro, Shinjuku, and Shibuya. Realizing their first stop is Shinjuku, Mika steels himself to expect the unexpected. Moments before Yu wakes up on his first day as a Moon Demon Company member, he dreams about Asuramaru, the demon in his sword, taking on the form of his young buddy, Mika, and threatening to continue haunting him with the unfortunate vision of seeing the dead buddies he abandoned years ago if he doesn't find an answer to the reason why he abandoned them. Following that, Asuramaru morphs into her true form, calls herself Yu's true power, and urges him to succumb to her when he needs her, so she will sate the vengeance within him. With all that said, she disappears into Yu's consciousness, and he wakes up to freshen up for his first day as a vampire hunter. Once he's fully dressed and armed for the day, Yu leaves his apartment, hopeful, and walks down to the subway station to see Shinoa already waiting there for him. Shinoa, upon seeing how spiffy he looks in his new uniform, teases him, and Yu, who's about to compliment her, just ignores the sly biatch and waits for their train to arrive. Once the train comes, they both hop on it and ride out to the outskirts of the Kansai region to join the others, who are waiting for them. While on their way there, Yu asks Shinoa to explain what she's doing there with them, and she tells him she's there to give him his orders. Apparently, there are vampires from the Kansai region planning to retake Shinjuku, so they have to figure out a way to curb them. When Yu starts yapping about killing vampires yet again, Shinoa urges him to calm down first, as they need to strengthen their defenses at Shinjuku before attacking the vampires, but then Yu ignores her and keeps doing his thing. In due time, they arrive at the Shinjuku train station and alight the train when it stops at their destination. After trekking a few more steps, they get to a checkpoint of Jaida soldiers, and Shinoa introduces both of them as members of the Moon Demon Company. For a moment, the idiotic soldiers there make fun of them for being kids in such an esteemed team, but eventually, they let Shinoa and Yu in upon verifying their identities. While the soldiers open the gates for both of them, Shinoa teases Yu for being called a kid by the soldiers, but Yu fires back, telling her that since she's the short one, then she must be the one they're referring to as the kid. Eventually, they engage each other in some small talk, and Yu finds out that Shinoa used to have a sister, who's now deceased. As soon as the gates are opened, Shinoa and Yu walk into the battle zone, and stop shortly after they hear a child confronting Gurren for placing her in a squad full of trainees. Yu asks Shinoa who the new doofus is, but rather than tell him who she is, Shinoa takes Yu down the stairs to join Shiho and Yoichi, all of whom he says hi to. Once they all get past the niceties, they listen to the pipsqueak complain to Gurren about his choice of team leader, which is Shinoa, but then Gurren, who couldn't care less, focuses his attention on the others and welcomes them. As soon as the pipsqueak, later identified as Mitsuba, or Mitsu for short, sees Shinoa, she clenches her fist and runs toward her to overwhelm her. Notwithstanding, Shinoa continues with the snide remarks, which pisses Mitsu so much that the duo eventually draw their weapons at each other. Tired of their childish banters, Gurren intervenes to stop their fight, holding them both by their necks, and threatens to throw them both in solitary confinement if they keep being a pain in the arse. At this point, both girls apologize for their stupidity, and the team presses forward. Moments later, Gurren introduces Mitsu as their fifth comrade, citing that they run a lower risk of getting killed by an armed vampire by moving in teams of 5, and warns them all against fighting each other and flying solo. As Yu and Shinoa engage each other in a teasing conversation, Mitsu surprise attacks Yui, and he blocks it instinctively, giving Mitsu the impression that she's probably there to teach the rookies. By this time, even Shiho, who's a certified troublemaker, expresses how tumultuous things are about to get, and Yoichi also teases him. Shortly afterward, Gurren gives them their first mission to make their way to Harajuku, where a settlement of vampires keeps humans as their blood bags, and crush and free the people trapped there. With all that said, Yu and his team press forward to explore the ruins of what used to be modern Tokyo. Somewhere along the way, Mitsu tells them all that the apocalypse monsters out there aren't like the ones they're used to fighting, so they shouldn't be too cocky and keep their formation. When Yu asks Shinoa what the hell's wrong with Mitsu, Shinoa just chuckles and continues saying nonsense. About an hour later, the team of 5 eventually gets to Harajuku Station and stops to observe the area, hoping to find the settlement. Before they make any progress, they all hear a little girl screaming nearby and stay on high alert. Very soon, the girl screaming earlier runs out of a corner, and the apocalypse monster chasing her soon appears, running after her. Naturally, Yu makes a move to go help the girl out, but Mitsu stops him from moving, citing that the scenario in front of him is a classic vampire trap to jeopardize the team's formation and put them all at risk. For a moment, Yu sticks to Mitsu's explanation, But when the girl eventually gets trapped, Yu damns the consequences, tells Mitsu that he's done living a life where people need to be left behind, and lets himself be used as bait by running forward to save the little girl. Mitsu, unable to let Yu kill himself, runs after him, but Shinoa and the rest stay behind to fight the oncoming vampires. Shortly after trapping the girl, the apocalypse monster makes a move to finish off the girl, but Yu arrives at the last minute and fends it off. Meanwhile, Shiho argues with Shinoa about the girl being used as bait, as the horsemen of the apocalypse have no will of their own, but then Shinoa makes him understand that the monsters are only there to punish them for overpopulating the earth. So there's that. As soon as Mitsu and Yu destroy the apocalypse monster, saving the girl in the process, the three vampires ambushing them approach Yu, attack him, and surround him. For the first wave of attacks, Yu does his best to defend against all three of them. When he gets cornered, he unleashes Asuramaru's powers and keeps all three vampires at bay. Having seen Yu's willpower, the vampires get a little scared of what to expect. While Yu unleashes more of Asumaru's power into his sword and body, another apocalypse monster attacks him, but thankfully, Shiho takes care of the monster easily, and has Yoichi finish off the third one. Soon after seeing Mitsu and the other fighters slice off their monsters like butter, the vampires figure all 5 of them are from the Vampire Extermination Unit. To capture them, one of the vampires instructs the other to call for backup, but Yu attacks them to prevent that, and they dodge his swing. With round 2 about to begin, Mitsu calls their expedition off and advises Yu to retreat alongside the others. Before that happens, one of the vampires trash talks Yu as a human, and Yu threatens to unalive them if they keep saying nonsense. To avoid unnecessary bloodshed, the vampires retreat for now, and Mitsu's team does the same. By nightfall, Yu gets slapped and scolded by Mitsu for going against her orders and breaking the formation earlier. In his defense, Yu tells her that even though he's sorry, he doesn't regret doing any of that, as he knows he just had to save the little girl no matter what. Satisfied by his response, Mitsu talks about Yu's convictions, but just then, the little girl they saved earlier approaches Yu and personally thanks him for saving her from the monster. Mitsu then speaks some soothing words to the little girl before letting the other soldiers escort her away. Shortly afterward, she leaves, and Shinoa tells Yu to go easy on Mitsu because of her dark past. A few hours later, while taking her bath, Mitsu complains about Yu being a pain in the arse, but Shinoa, who's bathing right beside her, teases Mitsu about her falling in love with Yua, and then asks her if she hates him that much. In response, Mitsu explains that she just hates people who put their comrades' lives at risk, and Shinoa reminds her of how she used to be just like him, having remembered the dangerous encounter she had that made her lose her former comrades, all because of her inability to sacrifice one to save the many. Mitsu mopes in the shower until Shinoa tries to make her feel better. Despite knowing that she might not have been at fault, Mitsu easily returns to her normal self and plays around with Shinoa in the shower. Moments before the girls join them, the boys tend to the little girl and give her a milk carton to drink from. While she drinks from the carton, they ask her a few questions about the place where she was captured, the vampire's hideout, but before the girl answers, the girls walk out of the bathroom and have Yu taken aback by their beauty. In due time, the girl tells them that the vampires are raising the other humans at Omotesando Station. The very next day, the team of 5 treks to Omotesando Station, but along the way, Shiho asks Mitsu what they're to do with the captured civilians once they get there, and Mitsu says they're to ignore them for now, as they have no room to worry about others. Obviously, Yu has no problem with Mitsu's speech, but when he hears her talk about retreating once they notice the vampires are armed, Yu freaks out and protests that. Before long, they get to the Omotesando subway, and Shinoa warns the rookies against acting on impulse, so they can all go in and come out without a scratch. With all that said, the team steel themselves and get ready to attack. As they walk down into the subway, Shinoa tells the others that based on the little girl's information, the vampires outnumber them 7-5. Also, since they're all very likely to be asleep by that time, they're going to charge in at full force and take them by surprise. When they get deep into the subway, they find hundreds of children dressed in vampire-like clothing and stop to stare at them for a while before continuing their mission. While they wait, Yu takes a moment to remember how life was for him 4 years ago in the vampire territory. But since he's there on a mission, he follows Mitsu's orders to head straight for floor B3, which is where the vampires are supposed to be. Once they get amid the worn-out children, who just keep staring at them, Shiho asks Shinoa and Mitsu why they can't just escape while the vampires' backs are turned, and Mitsu says it's because monsters are crawling outside the subway. In other words, they're getting protection from the vampires, and in return, the vampires harvest their blood. In any case, Mitsu and the fighters continue moving further into the subway, eager to conclude the situation so they can rescue the children as quickly as possible. When they finally encounter their first vampire, who was walking alone at the time, Yu waits for Mitsu to give the order to strike. As soon as she gives the order to draw weapons, Yu attacks the vampire vampire instantly and destroys the fool using Asuramaru's power. After watching Yu disobey her orders yet again, Mitsu tries to slap him, but this time, Yu stops her from doing so and reminds her that he didn't act on his own, as he waited for her to sound the order before striking. Also, the enemy was unarmed, so he had to react before the guy noticed them and called for backup. Before Mitsu utters a response to his statement, a vampire sneaks behind them to kill them, but Yu, quickly noticing the vampire attacking, pulls Mitsu closer to him and pushes the vampire a few meters back. Thereafter, he engages the vampire in a short one-on-one battle to the death, and Yu somehow manages to shock everyone by taking down the vampire in just one swing. In the aftermath of the battle, Shinoa continues teasing and yapping about Yu's insane strength like an idiot, as usual. But soon enough, Yu and his colleague Shiho somehow get into another argument about the stronger person, and the girls are left wondering what the heck's happening. While the duo argues, Shinoa tells Mitsu that Yu and Shiho are the troublemakers that Guren thought Mitsu could train. Having heard this, Mitsu calls the boys to order and gets everyone to continue their hunt for the remaining 5 vampires. Shortly after trekking a few more floors down the subway, Mitsu and the rest of the 4 fighters are approached by the remaining 5 vampires. Just when Mitsu thought they could wrap things up with the subway, 3 more vampires appear behind them, proving the little girl's intel to be false, and grab Mitsu by her neck. For a second, Mitsu wonders why there are 10 vampires in the subway when the little girl told them earlier that there were 7 in there. At this point, one of the backup vampires laughs and reveals to the team that they all had the little child lie about their numbers just to make their ambush much easier. Realizing that they're about to be cooked, Mitsu, who chooses to sacrifice herself to save her team, tells the others to leave her and save themselves. By this time, Yu steels himself and reassures Mitsu that he's never going to leave her behind. With that said, the battle between the humans and the vampires begins, and both Yu and Shiho fight on the front lines, with Shinoa and Yoichi helping from the rear. As the tension heightens, Yu gets wounded in some parts of his body, but with Mitsu's life on the line, he refuses to falter and just moves through the pain to get the job done. With Yu swiftly approaching him, the vampire holding Mitsu makes a move to finish her off before he gets to him. Unfortunately for the vampire, Asuramaru's power gives Yu the necessary speed boost he needs to close the gap in time, so he manages to destroy the vampire holding Mitsu and saves her life in the process. Now that Mitsu's saved, Yu returns the punchline about the family yaps to the remaining vampires left alive and encourages his colleagues to finish the remaining 6 or so vampires left, despite being outnumbered by all of them. Once Mitsu gives the order, they go all out on the vampires and manage to finish them all off in no time. About an hour after rescuing the kids, Yu gets to meet the little girl they saved from the monster earlier, who apologizes for deceiving them and assures her that she did the right thing to save her friends. While Yu offers more words of support to the little girl, Mitsu, who's nearby restocking on rations with Shinoa, stops packing the canned goods to stare at Yu, her knight in shining armor. Soon, Shinoa catches her staring romantically at the guy who saved her and teases her again. This time, Mitsu snaps out of her glare and asks Shinoa to tell her Yu's backstory, the one where Yu was held captive at the vampire city when he was a kid and left his family behind when he had no other choice. Touched by the story, Mitsu approaches Yu as soon as he's done speaking with the girl and asks him if the story Shinoa told her earlier was true. In response, Yu tells her to stay out of his business, but just before he leaves her, Mitsu calls him back and tells him she thinks he did the right thing. Despite that being true, Yu still condemns himself for leaving Mika and the others like a coward to save his life. But just before he opens up to Mitsu, he stops and keeps on moving. Just then, Mitsu calls him back one more time and fumbles an apology before running away like a scared kid, screaming that she still hates him. As the squad returns to formation, a random girl in the Moon Demon Company uniform stares at all 5 of them, as if observing them, and takes notes of their actions together. A few hours later, Mitsu's team set out one more time to figure out more vampire hideouts and rescue the children in them. Somewhere along the line, they stop when they get to a dead armored car and chill out to eat while Shiho hot wires the vehicle back on. While Shiho's at it, Yu stands beside the passenger window and yaps Shiho to death about driving the car once he turns it on. But then Shiho, after turning the car back on, it tells Yu not to fiddle with anything while he gets out to get a snack or something. Soon enough, Shiho joins the other 3, who are snacking at the time, to tell them he's finally hotwired the car. But just then, the stupid Yu drives the car, against Shiho's orders, and crashes it into a lamppost. As if that wasn't enough, he reverses the vehicle, nearly hitting Shiho on his way out, and eventually gets into a fight with the angry pink-haired dude, understandably. With no time to waste, Shinoa rallies the rest of them to get into the Shinoa-mobile so they can drive quickly to Shinjuku. But as soon as she hops into the driver's seat, she quickly gets reminded how short she is, as she can't even see past the dashboard. Yu and Shiho, upon noticing this, laugh their arses off over the midget, but Shinoa repays both of them by beating the shit out of them. Once they all get past that, Shiho drives all of them in silence, and they keep to their route till they eventually hear rumbling sounds from the area Mitsu believes to be Shinjuku. A few minutes after Shinoa advises all 5 of them to keep their eyes peeled for anything that might appear out of the ordinary, they all approach a smoky part of the city and spot a noble vampire walking in the middle of the road they're driving on. At first, Shiho tries to stop the car, but when Yu realizes that the vampire's a noble, he has Shiho step on the gas and ram the while they jump out of the car at the right time. To nobody's surprise, the noble vampire easily crushes the vehicle and deflects Yoichi's arrows. Just when he sends his Class 1 Wind Scythe attack to finish Yoichi off, Shinoa and Mitsu deflect the attack. Soon after, Shinoa dishes out instructions to the others to carry out, but just then, the noble vampire appears behind her to take her out, and Yu cuts off the vampire's hand holding the sword. For a moment, the surprised vampire steps back and yaps about Yu being an impressive human, but while Shinoa formulates an effective attack strategy to take the vampire out, 2 other noble vampires fall from the sky to protect their lord. Seeing this, Yu asks if they're to retreat, but Shinoa, knowing that the nobles will never let them go, advises they risk it all and fight with everything they have till there's nothing left. Luckily for them, before they engage the nobles, both girls remind their lord, aka the vampire they tried to ram earlier, that Farad is waiting for him on the front lines. To avoid angering the 7th progenitor, Crowley, the OG noble vampire, calls it a day and promises to fight all of them sometime in the future. As soon as he's gone, Shinoa heaves a sigh of relief, thanking heaven that they're saved, and Mitsu tells Yu, who's whining, that they need to join the Shinjuku units before those guys change their minds. Around this time, Yu curses at himself for still not measuring up to a vampire noble, despite having an infernal arm, but then Shinoa gets up and advises that he can narrow the power gap between them by learning a few curses alongside the weapon. However, even if he manages to do that, he'll still be the only one facing the vampire, meaning he's more likely to lose that way, unless he focuses on teamwork, which is more important than doing things alone. With that said, Shinoa thanks Yu for saving her, and he accepts her thanks. A few moments later, the team talks about what happens next, and ultimately decides to defend Shinjuku with all they've got. As soon as Yu and his peeps arrive at Shinjuku, the vampires launch an all-out war on the Jida base stationed there. In no time, dozens of vampire choppers raid the front lines of the Jida base, but in retaliation, the Jida forces fire several thousand arrows at the choppers, and manage to take out a few of them with each firing session. By the time the 4th wave begins, the commander manning the fort receives word that the southwest gate has already fallen to the enemy aircraft, so he steels himself and his men for what is to come. Just when they think the tides of battle are finally on their side, the Jida forces get the shock of their lives when the pilots of the special plane Mika was staring at earlier crashed the plane, which is loaded with explosives, into the fort walls, creating a large hole in their defense for their Vampirian forces to enter. Shortly after crashing the plane into the fort walls, the pilots, who are later identified to be the vampires who killed Yoichi's sister back then, Lacus and Renee, walk out yapping about the accuracy of the crash. While Lacus praises himself for completing the job, Renee complains about the small stuff. Once they get past that, the Vampirian forces spread out into enemy territory to continue the war beyond the fort walls. Deep inside the walls, Yu and his party wander around the chaotic army base, trying to figure out where the enemy is attacking from. Just moments after their arrival, the Vampirian choppers arrive at their base and rain missiles down on the Jida forces. Yu and his buddies do their best to get to cover to avoid getting hit, but now that they see Guren was right about the Kansai vampires' plan to destroy the Jida, they lie in wait to observe the flow of battle. Moments after getting to cover, Yoichi spots some of their colleagues using weapons like his and asks Shinoa about it. In response, Shinoa tells him that the colleagues are using a much weaker version of their Black Demon series infernal arms, usually called runic arms, but before they waste more time yapping, Yu gives them a heads up about an enemy chopper approaching, and they all get to safety before the chopper gunner fills them with bullet holes. Once the chopper gets close enough, the vampires infiltrate their spot, and Yu, alongside his colleagues and the rest of the Jida forces, arm themselves and fight the descended vampires to keep their defenses up. In the space of a few minutes, Yu, Mitsu, Yoichi, Shiho, and Shinoa work together, covering each other's backs to not only take down the enemy chopper gunning at them, but also kill off all the vampires attacking the rest of the Jida forces. As soon as they are done, they get to meet the corporal of the Shinjuku Security Unit, 3rd Platoon, Corporal Nagai, who thanks them all, the Moon Demon Company, for their help so far. With no time to waste, he takes Yu and the others to their on-site infirmary and tells them about the fall of the West defensive barrier. For now, the counterattack squad is currently currently barring them from further entry. But before the vampires eventually wipe them out, Nagai wants Yu and his peeps to head west and fend off the vampire onslaught. Yu and the others openly agree to Nagai's plan, so once the preparations have been made, the corporal himself offers to drive them down to the western defense barrier. Elsewhere, Gurren checks out a bunch of vampires feeding off their dead soldiers' blood from a mile away at a high vantage point. When he spots Mika and Farid, who happen to be the leaders of that squad of vampires, he zooms in on them to properly mark out their faces, but to his surprise, Farid spots him instantly, and this scares Gurren well enough for him to stop his stakeout for now. Seconds later, Sayuri shows up to express her concerns about their defense posts, but before she passes her message across, a vampire sneaks attacks her, leaving Gurren unable to help her in time. Thankfully, before the vampire gets to her, another one of Gurren's squad members, Mido, shows up and easily destroys the vampire. Moments later, the final two show up, yap on for a few seconds, and assure Gurren that Yu and his people are doing just fine. With the stage set and their squad complete, Gurren gives his team members his final speech, telling them that the vampire commander is at the 5th District's main intersection and urging them to go for him first to see some progress. Around that same time, Farid tells Mika about their new POIs, and then asks him about his thoughts on visiting Tokyo for the first time since the plague happened 8 years ago, especially now that he has the chance to see his beloved Hyakuya Yu. As Mika is about to respond, Farid notices him seriously fighting the urge to join the other vampires feeding on the dead soldiers, and teases him about it, saying it is best to fill his belly now that he has the chance. But just then, Mika fires back, calling out the hypocrite, Farid, for breaking every single law about drinking on the battlefield. Over time, the duo argues back and forth about the chain of events that led to Mika's transformation 4 years ago, but ultimately, Mika just ignores Farid's snide remarks, citing that he is only upset at himself for being powerless to protect his family back then, and keeps moving. Before going out of sight, Farid continues teasing him about protecting Yu's honor, but then tells him that refusing to drink human blood will not do him any favors. Mika ignores him still, refusing to drink the gushing blood of the dead soldiers, and takes his time to remember the first time he fed on blood 4 years ago. Mere moments after getting turned by cruel Tepes, Mika was given the chance to feed on an unconscious human for the first time in the Queen's quarters. But due to his conviction to remain human, Mika fought the urge to drink the poor guy's blood, despite hearing all the benefits drinking human blood would bring him. As for Cruel, who knows just how rough the first turn can be on a vampire, she tells Mika that if he does not feed on human blood in time, he will turn into a mindless demon and wander the earth in loneliness for eternity. When Mika still refuses to become one of her kind, Cruel slashes her wrist and drains some of her blood into a cup for Mika to drink so he can stay alive. But Mika, though eager to drink the blood, it slaps the cup away from her hand, still refusing to drink any blood. Eventually, Cruel gets tired of the guy and walks back to her throne, intentionally splashing some blood on the floor in front of Mika. Unable to resist the urge anymore, Mika instinctively pulls her back and slurps all that red juice from Cruel's forearm. Happy to finally see him doing better, Cruel pats his head and promises to make him her dog for eternity. By the time Mika snaps back to reality, he takes out a vial of Cruel's blood from his 10-day stash and slurps it down for strength. Right after, he hopes to find and rescue his brother Yu in the 10 days he has to spend in Tokyo before it is too late. Yu, on the other hand, continues traveling down to the western defense line with the corporal and his buddies. With 15 minutes left before they get to the defense barrier, Shinoa and Mitsu lecture Yu and the others about a way to get a risky edge over the vampire nobles. Since they now know that their Black Demon series weapons have no power against the vampire nobles, Shinoa tells them that to avoid getting killed in 2 seconds, they can use the performance-enhancing drugs produced by the pharmacy to help them synchronize with the demon in their weapons more easily, drawing out their true power. This means that if they can use the drugs effectively, then the vampire nobles will not beat them to a pulp. Unfortunately for all of them, there is a very risky drawdown to using the pills. While Yu gets excited over finally gaining an edge, Shinoa warns that he must not take 3 pills at a time, or else his organs will come spilling out. Even with 2 pills, they can still sustain serious trauma and shock in the aftermath of using them, so it is much safer for them to use just 1. In addition to that, the pill takes 10 seconds to activate and only lasts for 15 minutes, meaning they must finish off the vampire noble in 15 minutes. After receiving his pill, Yu asks Shinoa if they would have had a chance against Crowley back then if they used the pill, and Shinoa tells him they would be dead before the pills kicked in. With all that said, Yu asks a few final questions to make sure the pill works, and Shinoa warns him that while the pill is only a temporary power boost, it is all they have for now. A few seconds after their conversation, their vehicle gets attacked and toppled over by a vampire chopper, chopper. Thankfully, Yu and the others manage to survive the attack, but the corporal, aka their driver, passes out from the attack. With the chopper raining down machine gun bullets at Yu and the others, Yu still makes a move to rescue the unconscious corporal. But before the vampire chopper gets to them, Shiho and Shinoa form a defensive barrier to keep the machine gun bullets from killing Yu and Mitsu. Somewhere along the line, Yoichi fires an arrow at the chopper, but it dodges the arrow attacks and fires missiles at them. Eventually, the chopper crashes, but the missiles cause the ground under Yu and his people to open up and send them falling into a tunnel underneath the road. Once the hubbub dies down, Yu wakes Shinoa up, and they soon realize that they have landed in the subway. Since Mitsu and the other two should be fine, Shinoa and Yu focus on getting the corporal to safety first. Just then, they hear Shihao and the other two's voices, assuring them that they are fine and make plans to split up, so Shihao and the other two can get to the western defense line, while Yu and Shinoa take the corporal to get proper treatment. Around that same time, Gurren, who just finished taking down a bunch of vampires, comes face to face with Mika for the one-on-one battle of their lives. Moments before their battle begins, Farid takes his time to tell Mika about the elite team of the vampire extermination squad, the Moon Demon Company, warning him not to underestimate those humans. With all that said, Farid assembles all the vampire nobles under his command and prepares them for the intense battle against the humans of the Moon Demon Company. Around that same time, Gurren draws all the power he can from his blade and instructs his men to also prepare for the battle of their lives. In the meantime, Yuwu, upon arriving at the Western Defense Barrier's infirmary, recalls one of the memories he's had with Mika as a kid, one night when all was still good. Shortly after serving the other kids a good dinner, young Mika asked Yu, who was alone with him at the time, what he would do if he were to escape, and Yu initially told him there would be nothing to do, since the virus is still ravaging the world outside their city. Even so, Mika still asks him if he'd like to escape outside with all their family members, to a world without vampires, and this time, Yu tells him it'll be a pretty interesting sight to see. Having heard that response from his best buddy, Mika tells Yu that his work's cut out for him and instantly walks out to run some errands he kept a secret from Yu the entire time. Now that the older Yu has seen the reality of things in the outside world, he silently tells himself and Mika's spirit that the world outside the vampire city isn't any good either. Soon enough, Shinoa calls his attention so they can join the others at the Western Defense Barrier, but when he asks about the corporal, Shinoa assures him that he will survive his wounds. Aside from that, she tells him that Gurren's already issued their squad an order, and Yu, upon hearing that Gurren's there, leaves the infirmary instantly. On their way back en route, Shinoa tells Yu that Gurren and his army are currently at the 5th district, doing their best to fight and kill off the vampire's main forces, so they'd need their backup immediately. When Yu asks Shinoa about them winning the whole war upon defeating this main force she keeps talking about, Shinoa warns that the reverse could also happen, and humanity would be doomed. In any case, she hurries him up to regroup with the others at the defense line, so they don't get left behind. Sadly, before they even leave the western base, both of them overhear a scared soldier arguing with his commander against sending all their troops out to the defense line to keep it up. One time, the commander tells him not to worry as they have the vampire extermination unit there to fight with them. But then again, the scared soldier tells him that the squad they're working with consists of just 3 young kids fighting on the front lines, who might not all be any good. Upon hearing the man talk about the 3 kids, Yu instantly interrupts their meeting and asks him to describe the 3 kids he just talked about. Once he's confident enough that the 3 kids are Yoichi, Shiho, and Mitsu, Yu asks where they are fighting, and the man tells him it's at Shinjuku's Central Park. With that, he promises to handle the 3 kids, while the commander and the soldiers keep sending troops to the defense line. On his way to Central Park, Shinoa tries to talk Yu out of making brash assumptions, as they can't be certain that the 3 kids are their teammates. And for now, joining up with Gurren takes priority over a wild goose chase. However, when Yu decides he's heard enough of her yapping, he turns back, gives her one long, telling stare, and continues heading towards the park. Around that same time, Gurren and the rest of the vampire extermination unit began the war against the vampires and their nobles. After taking down a few smaller vampires, Sayuri tells Gurren to go for the commander, while Mito and she cover for him and Gurren. Upon realizing that's a good plan, thanks them and gets a move on. Moments before Gurren arrives at their spot, Farid, who's on a lamppost complaining about Crowley being late for the battle, instructs Lacus and Renee to round up the others and fend off all the humans except their commander Gurren. Soon after dishing out the orders, he joins Mika on the ground and talks about finally seeing Cruel Tepes' favorite in action. Around the time Gurren approaches them, Farid offers to fight Gurren together with Mika, but Mika refuses any help from him, citing that he doesn't need any help to bring down a human like Gurren. Farid, who knows firsthand how dangerous it is to underestimate humans, lets Mika learn his lesson the hard way. Yu, on the other hand, appreciates Shinoa for following him on this needless mission as they approach the park. But then Shinoa assures him that she'll always do anything for her family of 5. Shortly after teasing each other, they finally get to the park, where they find Yoichi, Shiho, and Mitsu doing their best to take down all the vampires attacking them without fail. At one point in their battle, Shiho and the others get cornered due to a lack of a proper formation. But before Shiho gets struck by one of the vampires, Yu and Shinoa show up and take down the vampire like a piece of cake. In the aftermath of the attack, Yu asks Shiho where the rest of the enemy is, and Shiho tells him they're already all dead on the ground, as the one Yu just killed happened to be the last. Around that time, Yu praises them for keeping up the good work, but then Shiho chastises Yu for coming to help them, citing that they never needed his help in the first place. If anything, Yu would have been better off regrouping at the defense line instead of wasting time coming to save them, and Yu agrees to this. However, before letting the pink-haired Nimrod off the hook, he assures Shiho that if such a scenario ever happened again, he'd do the same thing and come rushing to save them all. By this time, Shiho gets pissed at Yu's logic, but Yu explains that even though he trusts them all to be very tough, he'll still come back to save them over and over again. Unable to argue with the brain-dead fool anymore, Shiho and the others just tease Yu playfully and laugh their arses off. In due time, the rain stops, and Yu and his colleagues all prepare themselves to join the big boys at the defense line up front to slaughter as many vampires as they can. A few moments before they arrive on the front lines, Gurren and Mika go at each other's throats like they mean it, while the rest of the vampires and soldiers fight each other to the death beside them. During a pause in their brawl, Gurren compliments Mika for his viciousness, but Mika insults him in return. With no time to waste, Gurren places an explosive talisman he calls the Fudo Miu Ao spell on Mika's forehead and detonates it instantly. The resulting explosion releases a shockwave so large that it also causes a disturbance in the nearby battle, and even levels an entire skyscraper. In the aftermath, however, Gurren is shocked to see Mika unscathed from the explosion, so he exchanges a few snide remarks with Mika, who also tells him that such old craft won't work on modern vampires. By that time, Farid shows up, praises Mika for his overwhelming power and arrogance, warns that his power and arrogance might lead to his downfall, and then offers to assist Mika in his battle against Gurren. Irritated by Farid's underestimation, Mika asks him to spit out what he's playing at, but at this point, it's already too late, as that minor distraction from the battle was enough for Gurren and the rest of his squad to place traps all around Mika. With Mika now trapped, Gurren has Shigure, one of his squad members, activate the trap and force Mika into a corner. With intense coordination and teamwork, Gurren's teammates manage to back Mika into a corner. When the time comes for Gurren to deliver the final blow on Ichika, Farid appears out of nowhere to save him, and kicks Gurren all day till Sunday. After crash landing on a pile of debris, Gurren realizes they're all now in deep as he knows for sure that Farid's incredibly strong. Before round 3 begins, Farid warns Mika against underestimating humans, as they can be incredibly cunning, greedy, and tenacious. Mika, ever so irritated, tells Farid to shut the hell up and just stay out of his battle altogether. Once Farid does the needful, Mika lets his sword drink more of his blood, so he can acquire more power to fight Gurren and his peeps. When Gurren comes to, he checks his stopwatch to see he still has about 8 minutes left from the first pill to wear off, and finally decides to take a second pill just to fight Mika. Sayuri, seeing this, tries to get Gurren to stop, but before her vampire finishes her off, Mito strikes it and lands a slash on its cheek. Thereafter, Sayuri and Mito warn Gurren against taking such a pill as it could be his last, and Gurren, who's already made his peace with dying long ago, tells them they have to do the needful to take them out before the effect of the pills wears off. With the stage for the second battle set, Gurren yaps for a few seconds so his drug gets activated, but Mika sees through his deception and attacks him at a much faster pace than before. When Gurren asks about this, Mika tells him he's no longer holding back, and Gurren, irritated by that childish BS, calls him out. Notwithstanding, Mika easily pushes Gurren to a wall, but just as he's about to stab him in the chest, Yu and the others approach the battle scene and spot the blonde vampire standing in front of Gurren and preparing to stab him. Realizing what's about to happen, Yu and his colleagues run as fast as possible to get to Gurren on time, but it's already too late as Mika successfully stabs Gurren in the heart. The second after that, Yu jumps in without thinking, stabs the blonde vampire with his back turned, and only notices when he looks up at Mika that the blonde vampire he just stabbed is Mika, whom he thought was dead already. Upon realizing that the person he just stabbed was none other than Mika, Yu loses all control over himself and stops to accept the reality standing in front of him. While he's at it, Gurren screams at Yu and tells him to activate the curse on his weapon so he can kill Mika instantly. Unable to do that, Yu just keeps on staring at Mika's face, unable to figure out whether he's just a dream or he's real, until Gurren, who's still very much alive, picks up his sword and makes a move to end Mika's life. Unfortunately for him, Mika's very sharp, so he easily pulls himself out of Yu's sword and escapes Guren's strike. Shortly after Mika escapes, Guren punches Yu in the face, asks him why he didn't kill Mika when he had his chance, and coughs out some blood from his mouth. When Yu tries to help him back up, Guren tells him never to snivel over him and instead focus on the enemy because they're all on a battlefield. Around that same time, Mitsu and the others approach Yu and ask him why he didn't activate the curse to end Mika's life when he had the chance to do so. In response, Yu stammers, but eventually tells them that it's because Mika, his family, is with the vampires. With nothing more to say, Yu calls Mika out, with tears on his face, and soon gets a similar response from Mika, who's also more than happy to be with Yu one more time. With the tension in the atmosphere increasing, Farid starts yapping about how nice the reunion between Mika and his beloved princess, Yu, is going. Once he's done with the small talk, he asks Mika about his next move, reminding him that the humans have most likely been manipulating Yu from behind the scenes all along, and Mika tells him he's going to make sure he saves Yu from the filthy hands of the wretched humans that have been manipulating him all along. Hearing this, Farid considers turning Yu into a vampire since he's still a human, but this time, Mika threatens to kill him if he ever lays a finger on Yu. To avoid further conflict, Farid offers to help Mika take down the pesky humans protecting Yu so Mika can have his alone time with Yu. Mika, having seen that Yu's made friends, figures the humans are probably taking advantage of his kindness and naivete, so he draws the last power in his sword, giving Farid the go-ahead to start the battle to save Yu, and waits for the 7th progenitor, Crowley, to show up with his minions. As soon as Crowley arrives, Farid discusses with him, and soon finds out about the thing Crowley claims to have gotten along the way. Satisfied with the loot, Farid advises that they take Yu and the others as livestock, but Guren, upon realizing that more nobles are joining the fight, quickly gives the order to retreat. For a moment, Yu argues this retreat order, citing that his last family member, Mika, is on the other side waiting to be rescued. However, Guren reminds him that if they stay there any longer, then they might as well just offer themselves up to be killed by the vampires, which is something that shouldn't happen. At the same time, Yoichi and the others help Yu understand that they have no choice at this point but to retreat. Unfortunately, as soon as Guren and the others make a move to retreat, Farid circles and cuts them up in front, refusing to let them go. Around this time, Yu loses his and attacks the cause of all his troubles, Farid, blindly breaking their formation, just out of pure rage. Unable to let Yu get himself killed, Guren tries to kill Farid from behind, but Farid easily evades the attack and kicks it out of him. When Mito makes a move to attack Farid, Lacus lets go of Sayuri and blocks Mito before she gets to Farid. Soon after the attack, the others decide to abandon the retreat order and instead fight for their dear life. Some moments later, the vampire extermination unit goes into full force, fighting all out for their lives, but somewhere along the line, Yoichi gets a little distracted by Lacus, the vampire who killed his sister, but thankfully, before he's killed, Shiho kills the vampire attacking him and faces their main problem, Crowley. Around that same time, Farid slams Guren into the wall, but Yu attacks him, and he somehow gets behind him to eat him up. Just as Farid's about to finish Yu up, Mika slices his arm off his shoulders and forbids Farid from ever touching his buddy, Yu. Right after taking care of Farid, Mika faces Yu and tells him to abandon everything he has and just escape with him. Yu, who's still pretty much confused, asks Mika why he's with the vampires, but Mika, unable to explain at the moment, picks Yu up and runs away with him against his will. When Yu's had enough, he yanks himself off Mika, landing on a gas station roof with him, and starts asking Mika the important questions, especially the ones about the humans deceiving him. When Yu eventually figures out that Mika's no longer human, he blames himself for causing that, but then Mika, tired of all the babbling, tells Yu not to blame himself for causing anything, as he didn't do anything wrong. With no time to waste, Mika extends a helping hand towards Yu and begs him to go with him, but Yu, on the other hand, refuses to go with Mika as his new friends need him. Just as Mika tells him they're all using him, Yu hears Yoichi scream out Shinoa's name, so he turns to see the noble vampires capturing and feeding on his buddies one by one. All attempts made by Yu to stop those bastards from sucking his friend's blood was rendered futile as Mika did his best to keep Yu with him. Eventually, Yu pushes Mika off himself, but instead of trying to save himself, he stops and stares at the vampires, suck his friends off like they're animals. Realizing just how powerless he now is against these nobles, Yu finally lets go of his humanity and slowly begins his transformation into his inner demonic form. As the transformation begins, Yu's consciousness meets with Asura Maru, the demon inside his sword, and asks her if she's the one trying to possess him. In response, Asura Maru initially tells him no, citing that she never thought she'd be intimidated by the monster inside him, and then shows him the heavens opening to shine upon their cursed world from above. Before the impossible happens, Asura Maru advises Yu to take Mika's advice and escape with him before he loses his humanity. But right that moment, the skies above them in Yu's mind open up, up, and soon enough, angelic creatures flock the whole space, giving Asuramaru the sign that it's already too late. At this point, Asura tells Yu to brace himself as the monster within him is about to be released into the real world. Around that same time, Yu's body undergoes an extreme transformation that makes Gurren, who happens to know something, happy that their holy grail has finally awakened. Mika, upon seeing what's happening, figures the humans were really experimenting on poor Yue, and then tries to get Yue to come with him. Once Yu spots Mika, he destroys the platform they're on, rains black demonic liquids all over the place, and approaches his first target, Crowley, who's cocky enough to stand in front of him. Without hesitating, he throws an attack at Crowley, who dodges the attack, and creates a massive crater in the ground beyond him that shocks even the vampires. Before long, he takes the fight to Crowley and beats the living shit out of the proud vampire. When Crowley finally decides to take him seriously, Yu not only deflects all his attacks but also creates a black explosion, large enough to level the area around him. Soon after the hubbub dies down, Shinoa wakes up, spots the crater beside her, and expresses shock over what could cause such a thing. By this time, Crowley joins Farid, who's still holding Gurren hostage, and asks for his thoughts on the matter. Farid asks Gurren to explain what's happening, but Gurren refuses to tell him anything. As Yu approaches the enemy lines, he spots Shinoa and makes a move to finish her off, calling her a sinner who must be slaughtered by all means. Moments before Yu gets to her, Gurren tells her to do something about him, or he might take her out, thinking she's an enemy. Just then, Shinoa summons her Demon Series weapon to fight Yu, but Monster Yu easily pushes the weapon out of her hand and makes a move to end her. Fortunately for Shinoa, Mika stands in Yu's way, letting himself get stabbed, and then keeps on begging Yu never to kill humans. When Mika tries to get Shinoa to shut the hell up, he quickly realizes just how potent the stab is, and thinks on his feet. Around this time, Yu extends his sword further into Mika so that he can eventually stab Shinoa, but Gurren tells her to do something to bring him back. Otherwise, they're going to die. Upon figuring out what to do, Shinoa wraps her arms around Yu and begs him to snap out of it. With Shinoa around him, Yu lets out a scream so potent that even Mika was afraid of what was coming. Eventually, Yu manages to get himself back to normal, but he collapses right after. Right after showing the vampires his trump card, Gurren talks big to the vampires, who boast that Yu didn't harm them, and then helps them realize that they were only stalling for time. Before long, he calls their attention to one of his snipers, who's a few buildings away, aiming his Black Demon Series sniper rifle at their heads. Upon muttering a few things to his weapon, the guy fires his gun at them, but still, Crowley and Farid manage to dodge the bullets. Just when they thought they were in the clear, the vampire nobles realized that they had been surrounded by the strongest vampire exterminators out there, the Hiragi family. After all the niceties to their buddy, Gurren, the backup begins the final fight to capture the nobles and take them alive. Soon after the war against the vampires, which ends in favor of the humans, Shinoa, upon returning to the base, takes a trip down the basement of the building to check out something she's been suspicious about from the beginning. On her way down, she recalls her final meeting with Gurren before he disappeared underground, and remembers very clearly what Gurren told her when she tried to ask him some questions about Yu's transformation earlier. In due time, she arrives at the entrance to the top-secret laboratory and meets two security guards down there, who stop and order her to return to wherever she's coming from. When Shinoa tells them she's from the Vampire Extermination Unit, the officer tells her she still can't enter the lab because company officers and those below them are still prohibited from entering. At this point, Shinoa gets curious, so she asks them what the facility is used for, and the other guard there tells her it's a lab for guinea pigs. In other words, it's a place where scientists probe vampire bodies for exploitable weaknesses and test them out on humans. Having heard all that, Shinoa pulls up her Hiragi family crest and shows both guards before urging them to let her in once again. Once they recognize the insignia on the crest to belong to the Hiragi family, they buzz Shinoa in without questioning her any further. On her way into the lab, one of the guards asks Shinoa why she remains a sergeant, and she tells them that it's because she holds no interest in the trivial power struggles within the military, as that's the same thing that got her sister killed. Thereafter, Shinoa presses further into the first section of the laboratory, and soon spots dozens of prison cells filled with captured vampires in there. Ignoring the wails of the vampires, Shinoa keeps on moving toward a half-open door leading to a well-lit room, and gets through the door with no hassle whatsoever. Upon observing the various experiments being carried out there for a few seconds, she finally walks up to Gurren's office and asks him to explain what he's done with poor Yuo. At first, Gurren refuses to provide any answers to her weird questions, but when Shinoa slams the special cocktail of pills, Gurren specifically ordered her to give Yu due to his unique infernal arms on the table, demanding that he explain if those pills caused him to go berserk. Gurren gets up, fumbles around for a few seconds, and asks if she'd be satisfied if he admitted to carrying out human experimentation experimentation on poor Yuwu. With Shinoa remaining silent, Guren spends the next few minutes explaining how frail humanity is against the vampires, not forgetting to include the sacrifice her elder sister had to make to complete the research on the infernal arms, just to make sure humanity stands a fighting chance against those vampires, and helps Shinoa understand that they, as humans, don't have time for morals and honor in war. Seconds later, when Guren asks if Shinoa loves Yu, he notices the embarrassed look on her face and tells her he's not interested in whatever the hell goes on between both of them, as he's got more important things to worry about. With nothing more to discuss, he dismisses her, ignoring whatever she has to say, until Shinoa unfortunately storms out of his office, annoyed. However, before she goes far, Guren tells her that the drugs keeping Yu still unconscious, even after 5 days, should wear off soon. So if she loves him, then she should be with him till he wakes up. About an hour after she visits Guren's office, Shinoa visits Yu's ward, thinks about Guren's words about her being infatuated by Yu, and, while holding his hands, begs him to wake up again. As for Mika, who's getting his body detoxified in a chamber, he recalls the moments when Farid gave the order to retreat after the arrival of the Hiragi family. During that time, Mika didn't want to leave his beloved Yu just yet, and even threw a tantrum, but as soon as he spots the other humans swooning all over his beloved Yu, he gets more pissed and throws even more tantrums at Farid, who eventually gets tired of his tantrums and takes him back to base by force. Once his cursed detoxification procedure is complete, Mika is let out of the chamber, but before leaving the room, he spots his first real tears he's shed since he became a vampire, and joins Lacus and Renee in the changing room to get changed. There, Lacus tries to strike up a conversation with him, but since Mika keeps giving him the silent treatment, he focuses on discussing the forbidden technique the humans are experimenting with, the Seraphs of the End, with Renee. As it turns out, their initial mission in Shinjuku was to retrieve the scary monster Yu was becoming, but since they returned without it, both Lacus and Renee are unsure of whether or not they failed their mission, simply because Farid is a very hard book to read. As their yap about the monster continues, Mika, who just finished changing, heads out of the room, but before he goes far, Lacus asks him to tell them who he is, curious to understand why Mika's that close to Yu. After keeping quiet for a long time, Mika recalls the moment Yu found out he wasn't human anymore, and then tells them he's just his average ugly vampire. Before they respond to his ridiculous statement, the intercom comes on and instructs Mika to visit the third progenitor, Cruel Tepes, for a brief meeting, as she wishes to see him. By that time, Mika just ignores his conversation with the vampires altogether and leaves to see his master. By nightfall, Yu finally wakes up from his 7-day coma, spots Yoichi sleeping beside him, stares around for a while, and hurriedly wakes Yoichi back up. Once Yoichi's back up, he hugs Yu, happy to finally see him awake, and rushes out of the ward to inform the others about the good news, after reassuring Yu, who's worried that everyone's doing fine. As soon as Yoichi disappears out of sight, Yu thanks his stars for saving everybody, and suddenly realizes that his meeting with Mika back then wasn't a dream at all. When he thinks about the fact that Mika's alive a few more times, Yu breaks down in tears and sobs quietly until Shinoa, who has been watching him from the entrance, speaks up and teases him a little bit more before talking about how Yu found his family and whatnot. Despite all that's happened, Shinoa lets Yu know she's glad he's awake, but then Yu, who's been confused for a while now, asks her to tell him everything that's happened so far, as he doesn't remember a single thing from that day. In response, Shinoa teases him and tells him a whole bunch of nonsense from that day, citing that he fell unconscious while they were on the verge of annihilation. Fortunately for them, before the vampires captured them, Shinya and the other higher-ranking members of the Hiragi family arrived and captured many of the smaller vampires for experimentation. As for the nobles, Shinoa says many of them escaped, including Mika, who was taken by the vampires. Despite hearing that his friend was captured by the enemy, Yu still expresses his gratitude to their deity for Mika being alive. As he's about to start sulking, Shinoa lightens the mood by teasing him lightly this time, and this makes Yu smile a bit before she spaces off into the distance, thinking about the thoughts she had about Yu and Mika being family back when Shiho and the other two carried Yuo's unconscious body from the battlefield 7 days ago. Soon enough, Yu calls her back to the ward and thanks her for worrying about him, but this time, Shinoa sheepishly accepts his gratitude. Soon enough, he notices the bandages around Shinoa's neck and touches them nonchalantly to assess the wound. After feeling embarrassed enough, Shinoa tells Yu that the vampires were just a little thirsty for her blood, but before she finishes her sentence, Mitsu barges into the room, spots Yu and Shinoa being dangerously close to each other, and confronts Shinoa for making moves on Yu. Shinoa does her best to explain that she was just showing Yu the spot where the vampire bit her neck, but then Yu, who knows Mitsu was also bitten, asks her about her wound. Moments before she responds, however, Shihao and Yoichi arrive to check up on Yu. Initially, Shihao tries to act aloof about whatever's happening happening to you, especially when Yu apologizes for making them worry, but then the girls and Yoichi expose him for acting all worried way back when the battle was over, and Shiho gets pissed. Soon after, Yu calls everyone's attention, tells them just how blessed he is to have good friends like them, and lets them know he's glad they all made it out of that war alive. Shocked to hear such kind words from the doofus's mouth for the first time, his buddies tease him for a little while until Shiho exits the room to get them all some drinks, and Yoichi tags along. Around this time, Yu realizes that they're all on break, but when Shinoa talks about him rescuing Mika on time, Yu tells her he isn't in a rush at all, as he wouldn't want to cause any more trouble. Over time, the girls yap on continuously until it's almost midnight. A few hours later, the girls leave Yu's ward so he can rest, but as soon as they're gone, Yu gets out of bed, stares at the window, happy that none of his friends died in the recent war, and makes a promise to himself that he'll save his buddy, Mika, no matter what happens. Around that same time, Mika does the same thing and promises to save Yu when the time comes as well. As for Guren, he's seen signing a document and walking somewhere to hand it off to some unknown person right after turning off his turntable music box. Some moments later, someone from the Jida army meets with Farid on a random building top very late that night, collects some research data from Farid himself, and leaves shortly after, ignoring every yap Farid had to give.